This story proves that the greatest punishment is not physical pain, but the slow, deliberate destruction of a person's self-worth. It's a tale about a man named Arthur, a brilliant but unassuming accountant who was betrayed in the most profound way by his so-called best friend, Richard. They had been inseparable since childhood, a bond everyone thought was unbreakable. Arthur was the quiet genius, the numbers whiz, while Richard was the charismatic frontman, the deal-maker. Together, they built a successful financial consultancy from the ground up. Arthur trusted Richard implicitly, handing him not just his professional loyalty, but his personal vulnerabilities, his hopes, and his dreams. Their success was meteoric. They were the toast of the town, their firm a symbol of what friendship and hard work could achieve. But beneath the surface, a dark envy was festering in Richard's heart. He saw the respect the industry had for Arthur's intellect, the quiet admiration in clients' eyes for Arthur's integrity. Richard craved that. He wanted to be not just the face of the company, but its soul. He wanted to be the one praised for genius, not just for charm. This jealousy, this insatiable need for validation, became a cancer in their partnership. The betrayal, when it came, was swift and brutal. Richard, using his charisma and a web of carefully constructed lies, framed Arthur for massive financial fraud. He manipulated documents, forged signatures, and convinced their partners and clients that Arthur, the quiet, trustworthy friend, had been skimming millions. The evidence was so perfectly fabricated that Arthur's denials were seen as the desperate cries of a guilty man. In a matter of weeks, Arthur lost everything. He was fired from the company he co-founded, his professional licenses were revoked, and his reputation was left in ruins. He was publicly shamed, a pariah in the world he had helped build. The legal battle was short and devastating. Overwhelmed by the evidence and abandoned by everyone he thought he knew, Arthur was advised to take a plea deal to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. He walked away a broken man, not with a criminal record, but with something far worse, the complete annihilation of his identity. Richard, meanwhile, played the part of the heartbroken victim, the betrayed friend who had to make the hard choice to expose his partner. He took full control of the company, a conquering hero in the eyes of the world. For a year, Arthur vanished. He moved to a small, forgotten town, living off meager savings. The world thought he had fled in shame, but Arthur wasn't hiding. He was healing and he was planning. The initial rage and despair had been all-consuming, a fire that threatened to burn him to ash. He wanted Richard to suffer, to feel the same humiliation and loss. He could have leaked incriminating information he knew about Richard's own shady dealings, ruining him financially. But as he sat in his small, quiet apartment, surrounded by books and numbers, Arthur realized something profound. Ruining Richard's finances would be a temporary sting. It would be a fight, Richard understood, a battle of dollars and cents. The real Richard, the man defined by his ego and his public image, would survive. Arthur understood that Richard's entire sense of self was built on a lie. The lie that he was a brilliant, self-made man. His confidence wasn't internal. It was a reflection he saw in the eyes of others. To truly punish Richard, Arthur had to shatter that reflection. He had to make Richard confront the hollow man he truly was. And so, the ultimate revenge began. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. Arthur started by creating a new identity online. He became Pythagoras, an anonymous financial blogger. He didn't write about scandals or gossip. He wrote about the pure, elegant beauty of finance. His articles were masterpieces of logic and insight. He broke down complex market trends with stunning clarity, predicted economic shifts with uncanny accuracy, and offered financial strategies that were both innovative and profoundly ethical. He gave all this knowledge away for free. He wasn't selling a product, he was sharing a passion. Slowly, Pythagoras started gaining a following. At first, it was just a few finance students, then junior analysts, then seasoned professionals. His blog became a must-read in the financial community. People were captivated by the depth of his understanding and the elegance of his prose. On industry forums, the question was always the same. Who is Pythagoras? He was a ghost, a genius who seemed to operate on a different plane. Meanwhile, Richard was at the peak of his success. The firm, now solely his, was more profitable than ever. He was a sought-after speaker, a media darling, his face on magazine covers celebrating his visionary leadership, but a new trend was unsettling him. In every high-level meeting, at every conference, he kept hearing the name Pythagoras. Clients would forward him blog posts from Pythagoras asking for his opinion. Junior partners would quote Pythagoras' market analysis. Richard would read the articles, and a cold dread would creep up his spine. The logic, the unique perspective, the turn of phrase, it was all eerily familiar. It was Arthur's mind, distilled and perfected. Richard tried to dismiss it, to publicly critique Pythagoras' theories, but his arguments were clumsy and transparently self-serving. He was a showman trying to debate a grand master. The financial community saw right through it. For the first time, cracks began to appear in Richard's facade. People started whispering that Richard's own insight seemed shallow compared to the depth of Pythagoras. He was the king, but a mysterious philosopher was now the most respected voice in his kingdom. This was Arthur's checkmate. He had never once mentioned Richard or their old firm. He hadn't needed to. He had simply created a new standard of excellence, a standard so high that it naturally exposed Richard as mediocre. Richard, the man who craved admiration for his intellect, was now being constantly measured against an anonymous genius who was, in every way, his superior. And the worst part for Richard was, he knew it. He knew it was Arthur. The psychological toll on Richard was immense. He became obsessed, spending sleepless nights trying to unmask Pythagoras. He grew paranoid and irritable. His work suffered. His famous charisma curdled into an ugly arrogance. He would lash out at anyone who mentioned the name Pythagoras. He was no longer the confident leader. He was a desperate, haunted man, fighting a shadow that was smarter, better, and more respected than he could ever be. His empire was intact. His bank account was full, but his soul was being systematically dismantled. The final act came a year later. The most prestigious financial journal in the world announced they had secured the first overt interview with the reclusive Pythagoras. The entire industry was buzzing. Richard felt a surge of terror. On the day the interview was published, the world finally learned the truth. The article was titled The Resurrection of Arthur Vance. In the interview, Arthur didn't talk about revenge. He talked about his passion for the integrity of numbers. He calmly and factually laid out his new philosophies, his voice devoid of anger. He only briefly mentioned his past, framing it as a crucible that had forced him to rediscover his true purpose. He never accused Richard directly of the frame-up. He simply said his former partner had lost his way in the pursuit of fame. The effect was cataclysmic. By refusing to be a victim and instead re-emerging as a thought leader, Arthur rewrote the entire narrative. He wasn't the shamed fraudster. He was the philosopher king who had gone into the wilderness and returned with wisdom. In a single stroke, he reclaimed his name, his reputation, and his legacy. For Richard, it was the end. The public revelation that the genius he had been competing with was the very man he had destroyed was the ultimate humiliation. It confirmed what everyone had begun to suspect, that Arthur was, and always had been, the true talent. Richard wasn't just exposed as a fraud, he was exposed as irrelevant. His clients left in droves, not out of moral outrage, but because they wanted to work with a real genius. With Arthur, the firm collapsed, not from a lawsuit, but from a quiet exodus. Richard lost everything, but not in the way he had made Arthur lose. His money was still there, but it was worthless to him. His name was known, but only as a footnote in Arthur's story. He would walk into a room and feel the silent judgment, the pity, the smirks. He had built his entire identity on the admiration of others, and now, that admiration was gone forever, replaced by contempt. Arthur had taken nothing from him, no money, no property, but he had taken everything that mattered. He had destroyed Richard's reflection, forcing him to live for the rest of his life with the unbearable emptiness of who he really was. Arthur, on the other hand, founded a new, smaller firm, built on the principles of ethics and transparency he had championed as Pythagoras. He was more successful and, more importantly, more fulfilled than ever before. He had learned that true worth isn't something given to you by others, but something you build within yourself. His revenge wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, intellectual, and absolute. It was a testament to the idea that the greatest victory is not in destroying your enemy, but in becoming so much more than they could ever be. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think of Arthur's approach? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.